My guest today is Nicole Mitchell Gantt, an incredibly prolific and boundary-pushing flutist, composer, improviser, multimedia artist, poet, author, and educator, currently based in North Carolina. A former chair of the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians in Chicago, Mitchell Gantt has taught at the University of California, Irvine, and served as the Director of Jazz Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. She currently teaches composition and computer technologies in the University of Virginia's music department. She has led and performed in groups such as the Black Earth Ensemble, Black Earth Sway, the Nicole Mitchell Ensemble, the Nicole Mitchell Trio, Nicole Mitchell's Ice Crystals, Artifacts, the Indigo Trio, and many more. Her current and past musical collaborators include Tomeka Reid, Joël Leandre, Hamid Drake, Michael Dessin, Anthony Braxton, George Lewis, Muhal Richard Abrams, Roscoe Mitchell, Wadada Leo Smith, Jeff Parker, Myra Melford, Mark Dresser, Craig Taburn, Ariel Raw, Geri Allen, and Joshua White, again, among many others. So Nicole Mitchell Gantt, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Really, really appreciate your time. I want to start by asking you about something that you wrote in the Mandorla Letters, which is a book of yours that came out, I think it was late last year, at the beginning of this year. You write about art and music as being sort of a vehicle to reinvigorate our imaginations and help us imagine a better world, ideally or hopefully as a first step towards building that world. And you also talk about, or write about, modeling a community of friendship through sound.
Yes.
I wonder if you could expand on that for our audience.
Definitely. I think art is powerful, not just music, but all vehicles that we have, whether it be film, stories, music, even architecture,
Sure.
food.
Yeah,
There's so
definitely.
many vehicles of creativity that we can use with our imaginations to really play with. And I say play like as an important word. Play with the possibilities, play with alternatives, give us new ideas so that we can actually create the world that we really want to live in, because obviously there's a lot of problems right now, to say the least. And the arts have always formed a really important role, and imagination is one of our greatest resources for humanity. And of course, the arts is a great vehicle for the imagination. And so we can really visualize another way of being and practice it through the arts, then model it. And so when I talk about ensembles of friendship through sound, it's like the idea of building new societies through, whenever I have a project and I'm putting an ensemble together with different musicians, it actually it's like an opportunity to build a different type of community that could hopefully inspire others, so that we could really have the types of communities that share and are less hierarchical. You know, because this hierarchical thinking I talk a lot about in the book, I think is one of our main problems. This idea that someone is better than someone else because of what they're wearing or because of what their body looks like, that doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It's like, actually, we all have a role on the planet, and it's all interconnected. So there is no like one being more important than the other, even if you deal with biology and with these plants or us or any other living thing. So the fact that we do that as people, and we've been doing that in every society there is, and every culture there is, there's some aspects of that I think our next step is going to be to realize that that's actually not the way to go.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, you have all these connections between like hierarchy and dystopia in the book that I found really powerful, because yeah, I mean, it's just all of the ways that we hold ourselves back as a species by holding back individual people.
And we make choices every day based on our lens, our way of seeing the world, you know. And so the more we can open our way of seeing ourselves and the world, I think a lot of people are guilty of really beating themselves up. You know what I mean? And like being perfectionists, because we're kind of somehow acculturated to that. I'm not saying to like be lazy, but I'm saying But I'm saying, like, we have to accept that we all have a story, we all have a struggle. How do we actually have more empathy for each other, and also not make assumptions like we know what the other person is going through, like on a personal level, you know what I mean? Like, you're there, I'm here, you have a different experience through your body and through your family and all of that, and I do too. We can honor those differences, not erase them. You know what I'm saying? Because when we have a bouquet of flowers, we can appreciate all of those in their differences. Why can't we appreciate the differences between people and see them as assets? Diversity in not just our physicality and our cultures, but also the way we see the world, because it's going to take all of those different ways in order to actually make changes that are going to be helpful, you know, for us to survive. At this point, we're looking at survival because of the climate crisis that humanity has caused, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, and I mean, as we record this interview this summer,
Yeah.
it's like the ocean off the coast of Florida just got up to 101 degrees, and there was like massive fish die-offs off
my
the coast of
God.
Mexico. I mean, crazy stuff.
101 degrees in the ocean?
I heard that, yeah.
This is the Atlantic or
The Atlantic, yeah. It's terrifying. I mean, it's, yeah.
boiling?
Boiling,
What's the
yeah.
boiling point?
The boiling point is like 212, but even at 100, I mean, you're talking about major, like, mass death of a lot of ocean species that are accustomed to much more kind of moderate temperatures than that, you know? It's
Wow.
it's terrible.
And then I'm sure a lot are going deeper, as deep as
yeah,
they can go.
whatever they can do to survive, and
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, whole ecosystems are changing and shifting, and it's, yeah, I mean, it's like you say, as long as we keep prioritizing the same few sets of worldviews and the same ways of existing on this planet, I mean, it's going to keep getting worse. We have to change something.
Yeah.
And
So that's really the crux of the book. That's what it's really about. And I break it up into these little pieces where you could just open it up anywhere and just like read a chapter and talk about that. You know what I mean? It's almost like a kind of a magazine layout, the way the book is put
Yeah.
together, with these big ideas and then like a little bit of talk about that, and then it ties all together. So it's like fiction, it's like cultural theory, and then it's like music, and then it's all mixed up together.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a lot more about the book throughout this interview, but I just want to say, I mean, for the people who haven't checked it out, I love the way that, I mean, there's so many like novel things that you did in formatting it. Even the table of contents is
A
like
map of content.
Yeah, I've never seen a layout like that before. And then I as soon as I opened up that part of the book, I'm like, why doesn't every book lay it out like this? It's so cool. Yeah.
Well, the designers were really amazing.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have made sense if it wasn't laid out well. Because you even have to turn the book around
True, yeah.
to change your perspective. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why the ebook isn't really, I'm not really interested in doing that. But I am going to do an audiobook, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
but it's
nice.
called The Mandorla Letters for the Hopeful, and that was really important.
Yeah, for the hopeful.
For the
That's
hopeful.
right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I got a lot out of that. I really loved that book. I've heard you talk about having to sort of fight through some of your own shyness and some of your own discomfort to become an effective band leader.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if you can talk about music as a means of pushing past internal boundaries.
I think music is like a spiritual path, you know, because it'll take you to places you didn't expect to go if you really ride that stream, and it'll challenge you to become a better person. I think anything that you love to do, no matter what you're going to do in life, there's going to be a struggle, but you find a struggle that's joyful to you. So for me, that's been music. And so I was writing this music and I wanted to hear it, and I was in these bands, and I just wanted the bands I played in, could you play one of my songs? And they were like, no, you got to start your own band. I was like, I don't want to start my own band. I've always resisted this idea of having to tell people what to do. I just don't like that. you know, then I became a mother. So anyway, I had to
Life put
like
you
get
in
more
that
used
place.
to that, you know. But and now I'm a grandmother, you know. It's
Keeps
more than
going.
that, though. It's definitely more than that.
Of course, of course.
But on my simplistic thoughts of it before doing it, I thought I just don't like that. Maybe because I don't like being told what to do. I've always been an independent thinker, and I've always had plenty to do on my own. I didn't need anyone to tell me to do anything. Like, I always wanted to, like, I always had lots of ideas and things that I wanted to do. So I think that's where that comes from. But the idea of like having a band and like having people to have to do what I say or listen to my vision, like, it was kind of scary to me at first, you know, but I didn't really have a choice if I wanted to hear the music. And actually, Hamid Drake, the drummer, who's like really should be recognized way more because he's always in Europe, so he's not doing as much in the US, and then people don't realize how much he's contributed to the field. And he's been a great mentor. And then David Boykin also was one of the first musicians who really, I felt, expressed his belief in me. Like, you know that people are scared of you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody says they're scared of me. They just don't say anything. And he's like, yeah, that's why they don't say anything. I was like, oh, you know, but both of them told me, well, you need to start your own band. And I was like, so I went ahead and did it, you know. So it definitely pushed me. And actually my first concert of Black Earth Ensemble, like between different sets, like we did the first set and then I went in the bathroom during intermission and threw up.
Oh,
like,
no.
it was horrifying. So that's just to give people encouragement that, like, if you're scared or if it's something that seems really difficult, if I did it and I can do it, then you can do it.
Yeah, no, if you work through throwing up in between sets,
no,
I mean.
it wasn't easy. But of course, it's easier now.
Yeah, because you put in the work and you worked through your own struggles with it.
Yeah, so that was really difficult. And then of course you play music. Look at me right now, you're interviewing me. So the fact that I had to learn how to talk about the music and feel comfortable with that, you know, and the more you do, the easier it gets. You know, I remember being afraid about doing solo concerts. So I was living in Chicago and found a cafe Mestizo, and I basically like booked myself to do a free jazz jam session.
Okay.
And the first set I would always do a solo set.
Wow.
And I did that for like 2 years, and that was how I broke through just getting through like the, you know, challenge or the fear of playing solo for an hour by myself. Like, you know, and I think when you get to that place where you're not worried about if somebody doesn't show up or if the bridge on the bass breaks or if the bow on the cello breaks or if the drummer decided he didn't feel like coming tonight or whatever, you know, you can still pull it off. And I think that's important, you know, to be independent like that and to be ready for anything, because that's really what the music, I think that's why it trains us well as people, because we have to learn in music that anything can happen and you still have a responsibility to keep your word and do the show and do what you said you were going to do, you know. So I think that's why it's such a great path for self-actualization, you know. And then you start researching the things, like for me to find philosophical ideas, which is what I did with the Mandorla Awakening, and then try to sonify them. Like, you know, that wasn't easy to do. And that first challenge I think I did with the Xenogenesis project, it was inspired by Octavia Butler's book Dawn.
Yeah. Wow. Who I'm also going to ask you about later in the interview too, Octavia Butler for sure. Well, yeah, I feel like what you were describing, that's kind of the challenge, but also the power of creative music is to be kind of completely open to whatever comes. And I mean, I want to ask you, because I mentioned at the top of the program that you were the chair of the AACM at one point. first of all, what did it mean to you to hold that position? What were your goals for the organization? What responsibilities did you feel like you had? And also, because the AACM, I mean, it has it right in the name, Creative Musicians. What does creative music really mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's important that people know that the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians has a really important role in history with this concept of creative music. And I think there's a lot of people now that are really identifying with creative music. And Harvard, they changed the name of the program from jazz to jazz and creative music.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people are really like attracted to this idea of creative music, but they don't even necessarily know what the AACM is or what the history is. And the AACM in Chicago is a musicians collective that started in 1965. And these musicians, they wanted freedom. They wanted, like, they had a sense of community with each other already, and they decided to utilize their collective ideas, you know, come together and create new platforms for performing the music and also for creating whatever their imaginations led them to create without limitation. And at that time, there were a lot of limitations on the jazz scene in Chicago. You know, it's like there were clubs that were saying you could only play in trio, or you can only play Charlie Parker standards, or you can only do this, you can only do that, or you have to stop and start at this time, and the people are going to be drinking and socializing and not really listening to you. And, you know, it's like they came up with places where people are coming just to listen to the music. They created new forms of notation and were inventing new instruments and really investigating any and all types of music, like to inform them as composers and to identify as composers. And so it's a legacy that I think is important for everyone to really know about, because that idea of creating original music wasn't necessarily the thing back then. You know what I mean? And now it is.
Yeah.
Now it's like kind of like, yeah, of course. You know what I mean? But it wasn't always like that. And I think the AACM has played an important role in that. So I came in, of course, not in the beginning, but when I came in, it was really just, I wanted to help. You know, I see, like, you know, we say Power Stronger Than Itself, which is the name of George Lewis's book about the organization. Because it's like so much incredible potential that's like beyond what we've even done yet. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to really help. So I actually started as a secretary, then I was the vice chair, then I was like the co-chair, and then eventually I became the chair or the president. So it was, you know, when people ask me about being president, I can't really separate it from all the work I did on the board, like from that long period of time, you know, and being the actual president or the chair was actually only a little over a year. But I had been co-chair before that, I had been vice chair before that, I had been secretary before that. And in all of those years, I was just doing whatever I could to support the organization as a young person. And to tie connections between the New York and Chicago chapters, to help envision possibilities for performances in Europe with, you know, celebrating the AACM at festivals in France and in Italy, and making sure we had a good place for the school, a good location, you know, for the school to prosper, like for the, you know, serving the community and things. So those were the types of things that I was doing, fundraising, like, you know,
really important work,
just
though.
things that, like, it really truly is a collective. So basically, the board has always operated volunteers, so it's a lot of just hard, get your fingers dirty and you know, write grants and also talk to people and help us to like keep a unified vision and, you know, be inclusive and like manifest as many great ideas as we can, you know. So that's really what it's about. And right now, I was the first woman president, and now the second woman president right now is the active president right now, and her name is Coco Ulysses. She's a percussionist, a storyteller, an actress, and she also plays the diddly-bow, which is one of the oldest African American instruments. So she's the current president right now, and she's doing a lot of great work in Chicago, because obviously I don't live in Chicago now, but it's still going strong.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I want to ask you too, I don't know if I'm wrong in saying that this is the motto, but there's a saying that's associated with the AACM, ancient to the future.
Yeah, Ancient to the Future actually comes from the Art Ensemble of Chicago, which is one of the most popular bands to come out of the AACM. So the Art Ensemble of Chicago, Roscoe Mitchell, Don Moye, Malachi Favors, Lester Bowie, of course,
Joseph
you know, some of
Jarman.
those people,
Yeah.
Joseph Jarman, some of those people are obviously not with us anymore, but Moye and Roscoe are still keeping the art ensemble going. And I was happy to play on some of their later performances, like in the last few years. But yeah, that concept, Ancient to Future, came from the art ensemble. And of course, so it's associated with the AACM because the art ensemble represents the AACM, and definitely at its finest. So, you know, the concept Ancient to Future is also something that's become very, like, normalized in a way in our days right now. Just as Octavia Butler, her work is very much being celebrated, which I'm really happy about. When I did Xenogenesis in 2007, it wasn't necessarily the case that people even really knew about her work the way they do now.
Yeah.
You know, and her work, you know, we're sitting here in California. Like, she was here in California. She was at that LA library. I heard there was a fire or something in that library.
I didn't hear about
like years and years ago.
Okay.
But she spent almost every day in that library doing research, and all that science fiction ideas came from studying science and studying what was really being investigated in science. Like, it wasn't just all imagination, but it's imagination assisted by research, like serious research.
Yeah.
You know, and I think she was living, I think, in Altadena.
I think so,
and then the Huntington carries her archive now.
Right, I read that.
Yeah. So this area, you know, is important to that, and it's actually important to my own growth and development too. I don't know if you know, like, I lived in Southern California part of my childhood, and one of the best things was that my parents were kind of like early, like, Black folks into the New Age movement a little bit.
Oh,
so they were
wow.
like studying meditation, and, you know, we were going to self-realization fellowship, and
wow.
you know, it's like I had taken lessons, like Paramahansa Yogananda's like meditation lessons, I think when I was 16 or something. And so I think that was a great opportunity that also affected some of my artistic ideas. Yeah.
Well, I want to, I mean, I don't know if you mind saying a little bit more about Octavia Butler, but I mean, from the way that she influenced you to the way that you've built work, I could kind of say on the shoulders of some of what she's done.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge Tashi Reagan and the work she's doing. Parable of the Sower opera has been really traveling all over, all over, and just gaining a lot of influence right now. And it's really rooted in community work, and it's a really beautiful project. And it's like we've never actually met, but she had some connection with Octavia Butler's family, I think through her mother, for Bernice Reagan Johnson. So I just want to acknowledge her work. But yeah, I started doing work inspired by Octavia Butler in 2007. I had met her in 2006 at the Black Writers Conference that Hakeem Madabuti organized at Chicago State University when he was a distinguished professor there, and he's also a mentor to me and the founder of Third World Press, which is the oldest Black book publishing company in the country still to this day.
Wow.
And so I met her and I was like, oh my God, I like really want to do a project inspired by her work because I grew up reading her stories and my mom was so influenced by her.
Oh, wow.
She wrote her own science fiction story, so, you know, these books were on my shelf, you know, at home as a teenager. And so I kept coming back to them and I was like, I want to do this project. And so it was a real challenge because I think my music for the most part had been fairly joyful and celebratory mostly. And then now I'm like reading Dawn and the Xenogenesis trilogy and I'm like, oh my God, like this is horrific. You know what I mean? And I'm like, how do I like sonify this? How do I sonify facing fear? Because we avoid fear, we run away from fear. We want to be comfortable. That's the whole point of being human, it seems like. Trying to create a comfortable place and constantly having to recreate it because things are happening that make it not possible. And so how do I actually make music that confronts this process of fear? And then I'm thinking about, I mean, you know, that book really, I think universalizes a lot of human experiences, like this experience of slavery, experience in war when you're taken from your place, your family, and like put into this other foreign environment and you have to survive. Like that's really what the process of that book is about, and the experience of that book expressed through fantasy and science fiction. And I was like, how do I even express that musically? And I had to really go deep inside and confront some of my own fears and like come up with this musical language that I had never come up with before, you know. And it had to do with, you know, some scary things that I experienced as a child, or you know, that were now being made like manifest like sonically. And I know that it's like taking an angle from what we would call avant-garde jazz, or you know, like black experimental music, which is, like I said, very different from Toshi Reagan's approach, which is, you know, like really connecting with the tradition of black protest music. And so you can take so many different approaches from Octavia Butler, you know, and still express what she was trying to say, which I think is, you know, just shows like the depth of what her work is about, you know. So for me, I had to, like, what my fears were, like, my mother was a voice hearer, so she heard voices, and sometimes it seemed kind of scary for me as a child. And also my brother, like, he would play scary things, like he played the guitar and he would like try to scare me with his music and stuff like that. And so between those things, like I think that's how Xenogenesis Suite like sonically came to be the way it is. But it was really me trying to capture the essence of facing your fears through sound, which jazz critics were like, I can't snap my fingers to this. What is this about? Yeah.
No, I mean, that's really interesting. It reminds me of something that you wrote in the Mandorla Letters for The Hopeful, where you say that every piece of music you write was at first a story before it became sound.
Yeah.
And then I notice also you have a lot of, including, you know, stuff in your work that references Octavia Butler, and in other pieces, you have a lot of lyrical content, which is not necessarily super typical in, you know, now what we call jazz, and a lot of creative music tends to be more in an instrumental vein, even though if it started out as voice oriented or something. I wonder if you can talk about those creative processes, like where that comes from.
I think over time, I just started feeling like I needed words to express more what I was trying to do. Words will keep you honest. Like, you can express things instrumentally. You could have, like, you know, a title that says something, but for the most part, it's a little ambiguous. Like, you know what I mean? You can interpret it different ways, but like when you start using words, like for example, the words I used in Mandorla Awakening, like those are very direct. Like it's definitely like Black Lives Matter, like you know, in a big way. So I think I had the need to really say what I was trying to say, and I needed words to do it. And I've been writing poetry and writing longer than I've been playing music. So those things have always had a relationship with each other anyway. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And can you also talk about queerness as a force in your work? Because that was a big theme in the Mandorla Letters too.
Yeah, and it was my first time really talking about it. It was kind of like, I'm coming out in this book.
Yeah.
You know,
which is amazing.
Yeah, I think that I'm not necessarily very astute in talking about it that well, but I think it's an experience that's important to share, because it's something that, you know, people like are still learning how to like accept each other for who they are.
Yeah.
And this is the time for people to really do that. Like, you know, that whole period that we had of assimilation is like, and I talk about that in the book too, that's over. This idea that everybody has to kind of just try to squeeze themselves and fit into this white male straight standard or whatever. It's like, no, I think it's a little more complex than that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that we benefit from the differences that we have, you know what I mean? So I can't really define how that comes out in my music or not. You know, all I know is it's a part of who I am. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about. I want to ask you a little bit too, it's sort of some technical stuff about your music. I mean, when you play the flute, you often vocalize too. Yeah. And sometimes you're like vocalizing the same note that you're playing. Sometimes you're creating intervals. Sometimes you're hocketing, like switching between. Like, I mean, it's something that you do so expertly that it sounds effortless. I'm sure it took a lot of work to get it to that point.
I'm still working on it.
But you're you know, one of the leading voices on that instrument worldwide, and I mean, you're so on the cutting edge. What is it like to practice that? I mean, for other young musicians.
It was something that came organically. It was two things that brought me to it. One was I was exploring what I call the edge of beauty, and this idea of, especially my instrument, people not taking the flute seriously and always looking at it as it's this flowery thing, like, oh, it's so pretty and you know, and for me, like, no, the flute can be just as expressive as a saxophone or a trumpet or any other wind instrument, but people really, there's a lot of history of saxophonists and other musicians just picking a flute up on a tune and being like, oh, isn't this cute? And so then you have all these recordings that are kind of weak, and then it's creating this narrative that like, oh, well, you can only do so much with it. Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so obviously there's been a lot of great flutists, you know, Hubert Laws, James Newton, Eric Dolphy, who were very serious with the instrument, you know, and so that why is that story still happening if we have this tradition of very strong players just like anyone else? So there was that, but with the edge of beauty was this idea that like we have these standards or these ideas of what beautiful is, but when you get toward the edge and you ask yourself, do I like that? And you get kind of a little disturbed, like you like something and then you're kind of like, or do I like it? I like the tension of that. You know what I mean? And so I like pushing the music there. I like kind of leaning into the uncomfortable. And so how could I express that with my instrument? And so that led me to adding my voice to the instrument. And I also wanted to personalize the fact that it's like mostly men, you know, how do I give, you know, evidence that this is a woman musician?
Wow.
Obviously my voice is there, so they can't really deny that because I'm incorporating my voice into the instrument. And also to expand the expression, the emotional expression of it, I just intuitively started using my voice. So those were all the reasons of how it happened. And then it just kind of happened. It wasn't like, I think I'll use my voice. It was like I was playing a solo, and then all of a sudden I started doing it. And it was funny because the audience started laughing. Like the first time I did it, because I almost surprised myself. So I don't know what my face was doing, but like the audience was all laughing.
Oh, wow.
And so like the first recordings or the first performances of me incorporating my voice, the audience would be like laughing. And then now, of course, nobody laughs. I'm like, why is that they don't laugh? Is it me, how I'm expressing it or how I feel about it? Or like what made them laugh before? Looks, that was kind of cool. Like not, you know what I mean? I think humor is important because, you know, that's the other part, going back to our beginning of our conversation. Why do we take the hierarchy is a problem, and then us taking ourselves too seriously is a problem. You know, like been reading like Michael Singer, a lot of Michael Singer books right now, and he was like, you're just like a little speck of dust, like sitting on this, you know, this planet that's like spinning around in the middle of nowhere. Like, why are you taking yourself so seriously? Like,
Fair.
you know, it's kind of real. You know, it's kind of, that's truth, you know. And we're so centered on like, well, how do they feel about me? Or did they like that? Or like, why did that person do that? I'm mad at them. Or, and it's like, oh, well, look at this beautiful planet and the sun is shining. And, you know, like, why do we prioritize thoughts over experience? That's his question for us, I guess. You know, so I took that into a lot of places. Hopefully I answered your question.
No, you did. And yeah, you touched on a lot of stuff that I want to ask you about too, but I mean, before I move into that, I also want to just ask you, because I heard this, I think it was a video, not a recording, where it sounded like you were not vocalizing, but just using the force of your breath, getting multiple notes out of the flute simultaneously. Was I hallucinating
if I sing a note and play a note, then I can get two notes. And then I can make harmonies with singing. And then sometimes if I have a fingering that is a multiphonic and sing, then I can get a chord.
Okay. So what is the multiphonic about?
Well, there's like, Robert Dick like had this whole research he did on different flute fingerings. But there's specific fingerings that will give you more than one tone or more than one pitch at the same time. But there's only specific ones. It's not like any possibility of them, but only if, like, there's only a set number of multiphonics you can do just through fingerings.
Right.
And of course a different type of embouchure or your mouth.
Right.
Then if I sing with it, then it's gonna add even more to it. Yeah.
No, because I heard you do that, and I had never heard anybody do that before, so it kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, but in terms, I think you asked about people practicing that. I think it's just about, I used to just do chromatics, like with different interviews, singing, finding out what the balance is between your voice and the flute. You have to get a good balance for it to really have a sound, you know. My voice just happens to be the same range of the flute.
Right.
So I think that's probably why it's like, whoa, it's like, because sometimes you can't tell the difference between me singing and playing.
Yeah, no, you blend them in a way where it kind of, in a really good way, it confuses the ear a little bit. Yeah. I want to ask you too about sort of how you either inhabit sound worlds or construct sound worlds. I'm thinking about this album that you recorded solo but duo. It's called Duo with Dear Isle. and it's like you're, I think in Maine, right? And you're outdoors and like really interacting with
Nature.
these natural sounds in this really powerful way. What's that creative process like?
Well, there's no silence. Silence doesn't exist. There's always something happening. So because of that, when I'm playing solo, I'm not really playing solo because there's other things happening, and I'm acknowledging and interacting with whatever those other things are. Like a car going by.
Right.
You know, so even in quiet, quiet is a, you know, you could look at it as a type of silence, or you could look at it as not silence. It's just a type of quiet, like this quiet we have. You can hear the air conditioning and the wind blowing, and you know, but it's not silent. We're not speaking in silence. There's little sounds happening, and how do we connect to those things? It's a kind of mindfulness. But then through that mindfulness, like playing with it, you know, and especially with water. Like I love playing with water.
Yeah.
And there was so many amazing caves and things over there in Deer Isle, like where the water, the ocean is going into these caves and making these different sounds. And so I had a really good time doing that. But I have another solo album that I put out a lot earlier, even though it was done later.
Okay.
The Engraved in the Wind, which was done in the studio.
Okay.
And I'm working on a new one that's going to come out this fall.
Solo
And flute and electronics.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I want to ask you about your use of electronics too. Sometimes you'll be processing yourself. Sometimes you'll be playing and someone else is doing live processing. I've even seen you using like a smartphone in performance.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, tell me about that.
I use Koala, which is like a $2 app.
Okay.
And I've actually talked a little bit with the developer. I'd be asking him to do something. He's like, no, that's not what it's for. I'm like, come on.
But you're the musician. You can tell him what it's for.
He's like, no, this is for kids doing hip hop beats. I'm like, no, but I can do a lot with this too. Like, can you honor the things I'm asking you? You know, so I'm always talking to him. But
that's so cool.
But it's great because I got tired of, I mean, people make fun of me. When you have a flute, you could stick it in your backpack and other people are lugging these big instruments around. But it can be still really taxing. Like you got your flute, you got your computer, then you're bringing a bunch of electronics and you don't want to check them because they might break, and then you got to take them on the plane, and then you mess your shoulder up trying to put it on the overhead. And,
no, it's a whole thing.
You know, and then you're worried about somebody telling you your suitcase is overweight, and if they check it, it's going to break. And I know I can like get a certain kind of suitcase that I could check it, but right now flying and traveling is like a total nightmare. Like they've taken all the fun out of it. So the last thing I want to do is check a bag.
Yeah, no,
you know what
I mean? They'll definitely
so,
toss it and break whatever's in there.
Yeah, like my, you know, Tomeka, I don't know if she wants people to know, but her cello got completely destroyed.
No.
Like we were playing, I think in Berlin or somewhere, but like they had to have purposely broken that. Like it doesn't even seem possible the way that was broken. Wow. You know, and other friends of mine have had their instruments broken traveling, and there's no respect for musicians when you're flying. Like they really don't care.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, it's like you have to either have an instrument that's unbreakable, which now she has, you know, I don't know if it's graphite or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber,
graphite. Carbon fiber. Yeah. Or just don't check it, which of course I'm never going to check my flute. Ever.
No, you shouldn't.
You know, so having an app on my phone is just very convenient.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's a sampler.
Okay,
and so it's really not about the actual app, it's about what you put in it. And what I really found is my favorite thing is live sampling. So I used to worry about putting a bunch of stuff before I get started so I have something to work with. Now I don't even think about it because I'll put it in while I'm playing, and then I think it's cool for the audience to see something build.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different than working with a looper where it's like you play and you click and play and click and it kind of expands out, where it's like I can record something and then like turn into something completely different.
Yeah,
than it
because
was.
the people have kind of played out the whole loop thing where it's like, here's layer 1, now here's layer 1 and layer 2, now here's layer 3.
Yeah.
Like,
it was cool for a while.
yeah, for the first 15 years or something.
Yeah, it's a pretty good run.
No, yeah, for sure.
Pretty good run.
So you, a couple responses ago, you were talking about the edge of beauty.
Yeah.
And that took me back to a couple phrases that I found really impactful in the Mandorla Letters for the Hopeful. You talked about messiness as a sonic aesthetic, and then together / not together.
Together, not together, I think is something a lot of people have like really embraced when I talk about it, because it's what we are. We're together, but we're not together. Like, we're together right now, but you're over there, I'm over here, and we're doing this together. We're not like uniformly saying the same thing, or we even talk over each other sometimes. It's a little messy.
Yeah.
And that's organic. That's nature. You know what I mean? The synchronization and the mechanization of like unison rhythms, like people moving exactly in the same thing and trying to perfect that thing, I don't really see that in nature. You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
I think that's like a human thing. Just like we've got straight lines that don't really exist in nature. And that's why they're vulnerable, because it's flexibility is really the essence of life. You know what I mean? So when we make something rigid, it's not going to last. And it doesn't reflect true like life. You know what I mean? And so that's what together, not together is the idea of like, I could have a phrase of music, and then instead of having, I want everybody to play it exactly together, it's like, no, you can change. You can have a little slightly different tempo. And sometimes you can come together like for a second and then break away, and, you know, no leader, like you could lead sometimes, you could lead sometimes, and really trying to think independently and act independently. That's what together, not together is. And I feel like that's who we are anyway. Nobody likes being told what to do and like, okay, you got to do it exactly like this. We do need precision. I'm not saying precision doesn't have a place, because obviously when you're on an airplane, you don't want the guy or the woman to kind of land the plane. Like, you know, there's extremes, you know, it's like, or they kind of are following the presets or whatever, or they kind of did surgery, like, you know.
Right. Kind of closed you back up afterwards.
You know what I mean? But I don't think that's really what I'm saying. I think that, I'm not saying that precision doesn't have a place, but I think that we are over perfectionist, and music is a space for expression. I always say expression, not perfection, because I think perfection is really it's a mind game, because we never actually are perfect. It's, you know, it's like the bitmap thing, you know what I mean? It's like you can break things down into the little cubes, but actually it's not really those little cubes. And there's still like little slight differences, and, you know,
wow.
That's together, not together, you know, and I play with it a lot in my musical concepts. The other thing you said, which now I don't remember.
Oh, messiness is a
The messiness,
aesthetic.
people don't like that when I say that. They're like, well, I'm organized, and I think it's important to be organized, and we're different because I don't like messiness. And of course, I like to clean my house. I'm not saying that.
Right, yeah.
I'm not like saying I like to live in total chaos. You know what I mean? But I think first of all, I'm a curly head, so it's like, you got a little curler too. So it's like, you can't, it's just not going to be exactly,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, you know, you go for it, but it's not going to be exactly the way you want it.
It comes out the way it comes
because it has
out.
its own life. You know what I mean? So by messiness, all I'm trying to say is give yourself a break. Like, you know, it's okay to not be perfect, and be striving to be perfect puts you a lot in your head. And so if you can accept the idea of being messy, a little messy, then you can actually get to the place of intuition versus logic and thinking, because music and improvisation don't really go well with just like intellectual decisions. It's more intuitive, and because we have other intelligences that are beyond intellectual thinking. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm trying to get to with the messiness. And also, I think people think something's messy when they just don't understand it because there's so much going on. And so I think my music is perceived as messy because I have lots of layers, and I like thick, dense structures. And you know, most people, not most people, but a lot of people like elegant, clean lines, like clarity, like I could see this is happening and this is happening, and I might have too much happening and they're like, I don't know what's going on there, you know, and that's messy. But messy a lot of times is interpretation that I'm just embracing something from the outside that I'm embracing on the inside. Like, okay, you perceive this as messy, and so I'm going to embrace that idea, you know, because we don't understand everything, you know. So my music is not necessarily made to be able to understand everything. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. No. That's a great answer to the question.
I mean, do we understand the structure of that plant right there?
Not
I mean,
at
it's just
all.
all over the place.
Yeah.
But it has order. It has like parameters that it's following and how it's growing.
It grew up from a seed. I mean,
But it's like that particular environment and its DNA of what it does created that. And it looks messy, but it looks cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I love the way that you embrace that. I mean, it's obviously people tend to apply it more as like a slander or like a derogatory label, right? But to me, it's like your playing is like so super controlled, like your sound is so tight and so almost like sculptural sometimes. And then so for you to be playing with that level of control, but like next to a stream or like with other people who can come in and do something, but you didn't tell them exactly when to come in or exactly what to do, like...
And they might surprise me.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah.
And I also like writing stuff that might not really be super possible to do, and enjoy the struggle of them trying to do it.
Yeah.
You know? Because what if it's all perfect and defined? That's not life. We don't understand everything. Why do we always throw out the unknown, like that's bad? You know what I mean? The unknown is the mystery of life. We don't understand everything about this life, you know, and we're not going to. And that's part of what makes it magical, you know. So I like to try to make space for that magical, because I don't control it, you know, but I like it to have space to be present if I can.
Yeah, no, and the way a lot of your pieces, especially like ensemble pieces, unfold, I feel like much like life, right? It's like something will happen, and as a listener, I'm like, okay, I had no idea that was coming, but it really works in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I want to ask you sort of about one of your narrative devices in the Mandorla Letters for the Hopeful. You have this narrator character called Eeye, which you spell Eeye. And I mean, correct me for all the things I say wrong here. I feel like this narrator is either kind of a dimension of you, or like relates to you the way a shadow relates to an object, or maybe you're the shadow and they're the object. They also describe themselves, or she describes herself as the second I in I and I. I wonder if you can talk about how you came up with this narrator's voice and who this narrator is.
Sure. Well, I and I in Rastafarianism, it's like, I think it's cool. I really love that there's a acknowledgement of I and I, because there's you talking right now, and then there's you observing yourself talking right now. You know what I mean? And which one is you?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about with I, Eeye, is that we have a witness in each of us that is the actual presence that always exists and maybe existed before our bodies existed. You know what I mean? And it's the place of our greatest wisdom, if it was a place. You know what I mean? And we take it, her, him, them for granted, you know, because we wake up, we brush our teeth, you know, we think as soon as we wake, maybe the idea of waking up from sleep is the idea that we started thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is that really what being awake means, that we start thinking? You know, like, what am I going to do today? Oh, I forgot to do this. Oh, you know, so-and-so is going to call me and I got to get this done. And wow, it's a beautiful day and I want to go outside, but I have to finish this email and, you know, whatever. Like, is that really being awake? Is that really being awake? You know, what is being awake?
And it's like, even obviously when we're asleep, we're processing things too, right? Through dreams.
Yeah. But there's definitely two of us, you know what I mean? And it's funny because I said my mother was a voice hearer, but we all have voices in our head. You know what I mean? Like, every single person thinks in their head.
Yeah.
You know, and is narrating their life in their head, but that narrator, then when we're talking to people, we might even be thinking thoughts while we're talking to somebody else, but the narrator is not I. It's not the I I'm talking about. The I that I'm talking about is the one who's observing the narrator.
No, that's amazing. That's so profound.
And it's not something you can really define very well, but I think when we become more aware of that, then there's kind of like a breath that happens and a space that happens. And in that space, we become more whole and more complete. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Amazing. I want to ask you about something else from the same book. There's a quote in there that I found really powerful. I mean, a quote of you where you wrote, "We are the poison we try to heal ourselves from." I don't know if there's anything to even add, but if you feel like expanding on that, I'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, like, when I was like in my early 20s, I wrote this really short poem, and that doesn't come from it, but one of the things that I said was, your greatest enemies are within, and that doubt and fear are their names, and we're always worried about what somebody did to us, or why somebody didn't do this, or worried about someone we care about that's not doing that, or whatever. But it's like, whatever that triggers us, it's like actually something that we have in ourselves that we're not comfortable with. And it's like a projection that we see in what's going on outside of us, of something that's inside of us, but we're afraid to really deal with what's inside. So we want to work externally with all this stuff outside, you know, but that's actually just showing us what we have to work on inside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
wow,
that's kind of the poison that we're trying to heal. It's like you're always trying to like help people, or I'm talking about myself now, like, you know, you see things that you want to like do something about, or you want to help somebody who's having a hard time, or you want to do this, but it's like, what about the things about what's going on with you? What's going on with you? You know what I mean? Like, you're so concerned about these other people and what they're doing and not doing, or, you know, what's happening around you, outside of you. But somebody makes you upset. What's that? It's actually something that you felt before.
Before you ever met that
gone inside
person.
there to find what is that and where does it come from? And you know, we have a lot of experiences that build up inside of us because we don't address it. And how do we actually, like I was saying with the uncomfortable in the music, like how do we actually lean into it versus avoiding or trying to like do a bunch of busy work and it's not there, or you know, things like that. So I think We Are the Poison is like, we can't really not breathe this air we're breathing. Like, you can't like say, you know, we can do something else. It's actually, the breathing is where we need to like get to, not the air. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know if
No, that
that
makes a lot of sense, and it's so interesting because it's true, right? It's often easier to try and help other people with their problems than to acknowledge our own problems and work on those, and it can kind of be a way of distracting ourselves from that work.
Right, and it's like I need you to be different so that I can be okay. Like, why can't you just? Why can't I just be okay? Like, what does that have to do with somebody outside of me doing something? Why am I not okay because this person over here is doing something to themselves? Like, not even necessarily to me. And if they are doing it toward me, okay, I don't have to agree to that. You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah. No, that's amazing.
And I think that's really where the hardest work is. And I'm not saying that I've done it, but I know that that's where it is. You know what I mean? It's like the music can be a mirror, you know, for us to kind of go through these different things. Because why was I attracted to Octavia Butler? I've got some things I have to face, fears I have to face in myself. And this music is allowing me to look at it and explore it. And, you know, I also like don't like the idea of perpetuating like what I see in the world through the music. I don't feel like that's super helpful. Like to say the world is fucked up, I'm gonna make a song called "The World is Fucked Up." The world is fucked up. It's like, did that help? Maybe because it was funny, you know,
right.
Maybe because we laughed, you know, because it was funny, like because it was kind of stupid and simplistic. But like, did that actually make the world better? Like, if that's the issue, like, I don't know. So how do you actually use the art to do it, you know?
Wow.
Joy is very important to me, you know, because we're alive.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Like, we don't have a whole lot of time to be here, so it's kind of amazing.
It is.
And that's the core right there, you know? That's where the hope is, like, well, that plant is there and it looks amazing, and you know, like, we're here and we got all these things going on in our head that makes us think, no, you're supposed to be miserable right now, but I'm breathing and like I'm comfortable right now and talking to you, so what's wrong with that?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's really, I feel like sometimes I'm in my worst days, I'm still like, it's so amazing to just be here.
Yeah.
Experiencing
And it's a
this.
Temporary situation.
Exactly.
For everybody.
That's what makes it so powerful, I think.
And that's the funny too thing about difference is like, difference is important to be celebrated. In the end, when we die, it's all the same.
Right. Yeah.
We all are in the ground or scattered into the waters or wherever.
Yeah.
And that's it.
But pretty much the same matter.
We all end.
Yeah.
We all end.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
And none of us decides when that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one more really direct question about your book, because you just had so many like nuggets in there that I found really it just so beautifully captured something that was larger than the one sentence it took you to express it. You talk about this kind of, to me it's like an elitist like fiction. Basically you say we've been taught to believe that to be creative is a luxury that most struggling to survive don't have time for. I mean, yeah, what is this myth, and what is its hold over us, and how can we kind of shatter it?
That's a tough one. I think it's almost like when you have enough, you are comfortable, you have a place to live, you have food to eat, you have friends, and then people, maybe family members or friends that don't have those things. And what makes it okay for you to be okay if they're not okay? And it's like, if they're not okay, then you're not okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way the world is, but the problem is the only way to actually make it better is to go in that place that's not physical, and that's where the art is. The art is in a place that's not physical, and you can't use the physical environment to fix the physical environment. Like, you have to, if you really want transformation, you have to go into more of the energetic space. And that's where the answers are. That's where the inspiration is, to actually find solutions that you can then bring to the physical world. So that's, I guess, shattering the myth, because the myth acts like the physical environment is all there is. So to say that art is a luxury that we can't afford because there's too many things that we have to address, but how are you going to address them if you have these limitations in the physical realm that you don't see the answers? The actual answers come from the inspiration, which comes from your intuition, which comes from the creativity, which comes from within. So you have to be able to go within, and you have to give yourself permission to go within in order to find those answers, and then you can bring them out into the physical world. So that's my answer.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to sort of shift gears and get more back to questions about your life and stuff like that. Right, so from 2011 to 2019, you were teaching at UC Irvine, and that's, you mentioned earlier that you spent a lot of your childhood, I think you were born in Syracuse, and then you spent most of your childhood in Orange County. And from past interviews I've seen with you, you encountered some really horrific racism. It's not like there's an okay age to ever encounter those things, but I mean, as a very small child, like really heavy stuff. Did you have reservations about moving back to Orange County or to Southern California as an adult?
The reason why it wasn't hard to come back was because my dad was here, and he was up in age, and he refused to come to Chicago because it's too much snow. And he was like, I'm not coming there. And I'm like, okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to be close to my dad, because he just felt frail to me. He seemed frail to me. And so that was like a blessing to be able to come and be close to him. And actually, it was the exact right time, because he got sick like 6 months after I got here. Wow. And then he was in rehab, and then he died. So I got to be able to be with him through his transition and spend that time with him that would have been hard if I lived somewhere else.
Sure.
So that's why it wasn't hard to come back, because I was focused on, I get to be closer to my dad. And actually it was funny because my daughter's dad also was living in LA, so it was an opportunity for her to be closer to her dad. So it actually lined up. It was very aligned, for me to come back. And I feel that there were blessings that I received coming back that was like, it was like Southern California saying, yeah, I know we gave you a hard time, so here's some blessings. I mean, my experience at UCI, there was definitely a lot of blessings, you know, that came through that experience that definitely were life-changing, you know, like the type of support and respect that I received in academia at UCI was nothing I had ever experienced before. I was always just not, I really wasn't, I'm trying to think of the word, but I really wasn't appreciated in Chicago in academia at all.
Wow.
Like, at all. Like,
Wow.
really. I had a lot of jobs, but none of them were really that, you know, like a position that would really support me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really, you know, was really financially hardship like the whole time I was in Chicago, you know. So that really made a big difference in my life, you know. And it helped propel me, you know, to where I am now. So it definitely was something that needed to happen, you know.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to say, right? Respect isn't just like giving somebody props. It's about paying somebody
For their work. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Which, yeah, I mean, sort of along those lines, and I don't mean to put anybody on blast or whatever, but another thing you've written...
I don't like putting people
on No, but another thing you wrote was that you said, you know, UCI has gotten credit, you know, due credit, for serving a critical mass of Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, and first-generation students. But then you go on to point out that no U.S. public university is offered a federal financial incentive for increasing specifically its inclusion and support of Black students.
It's exactly true.
Why do you think that is?
I think because of the historically Black colleges and the support that they receive, it's kind of seen as, oh, well, we did that, so we don't have to worry about this, which should not be the case, because there should be equal support for Black students to be at public universities.
Yeah.
You know, because their presence is needed for everyone. You know what I'm saying? Not just for themselves, but like they're educating the people that their peers and their teachers to be present in those spaces, not just in a Black school, a historically Black school. And I think that's the reason, or that's the excuse. And I don't think it's correct. I don't think it should be that way. You know, and now, as you see, I guess the Supreme Court made that decision where now what California was doing is now throughout the whole United States in terms of admission policies, because you had Prop 209 in California that basically ruled out affirmative action for years. And when I was a student at UC San Diego, it was like 2% Black students. And when I came to Irvine 30 years later, it was like 2% Black students. And now they're trying to do that throughout the whole country. And not have it be reflected of the population of what, you know, the area where the school is, which is, I think it should be more reflective of the population
or the
demographic of the area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's still a real problem. And yeah, I don't agree with it. And that was one thing that really bothered me. It was like, this is a beautiful picture, but who's missing from the picture? And what is being done about, there's people that are not at this table right now. And like, now I'm being put in a position to teach in a place where certain populations don't have access to me as a teacher. Like, it's not fair. You know what I mean? So I think that statement, I've never heard anyone say it. Like, I said it in the book, but I've never heard anyone actually acknowledge that like, why is there no federal incentive for inclusion of Black students at a public university? Like, they literally get money if there's enough Asian students and enough Latinx students and enough first generation students. They get extra money. The school gets extra money. And especially, who built the damn school?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So no, it's not right.
Yeah, no, for sure. You were talking too a little while ago about having to deal with financial hardship as not just as an artist in Chicago, but I mean, all of the stuff you did for AACM, all of the stuff that you did to support the art scene citywide. I think you were interning at the press for a while.
Yeah, but I never took that attitude.
No. Well,
because I always like was able to do what I needed to do. You know what I'm saying? Like I never took on like a poverty mindset. Like, you know, I was talking to this about to my daughter like recently. It's like, do you think you grew up poor? She's like, no. She's like, she had everything she needed and more, and got to do all kind of things that other kids didn't get to do. But I'm like, check it out. Here's my Social Security history of my income. Oh my God, how did you do that? Wow. You know, it's like, you could be resourceful, you know, and find ways to do things, you know, and still be able to be supportive of other people. Like, it's all creativity. And also, people always just felt that I had money. And I said, well, if they feel that way, I will have it. I'm just going to embrace that. Even if I don't have it right now, I'm just going to embrace that idea. And that's magic. That's part of that magic unknown stuff, because it always comes. You know what I mean? Like when you don't have fear attached to it, you know, it always comes. And you always like find ways to be able to do certain things that are important, you know, so yeah. But anyway, what were you saying?
Well, no.
I just wanted to correct that frame.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. I do. Well, you, I think, wrote in the book that for at least a short time, you were not housed. And
that's true.
And
I was
people
homeless
these days...
with a baby. I was homeless with a baby. Yeah, for a short time. And I had a really good friend that shared her bed with me and my child, because she didn't even have anywhere else for me to sleep. But like, she wasn't going to have me sleeping in the street or whatever. So, and I had family members that told me no, you know. Wow. And so, yeah, I did have that experience.
I mean, I only ask about it because there's so many people going through that today.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think your story is so powerful because you've done so much after that. I'm sure before that too, but then, I mean, all of the work that you've done throughout your career is so strong. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where the question comes from, because it's such a struggle for so many people today. We have 70,000 plus people in this city alone.
Yeah.
Who are either in their cars or on the street or in shelters or on somebody's couch. I mean, it's a time of major crisis, but you know, I mean, people still manage to find beauty in the world, at least, you know, once you were back on your feet. Look at all the things that you've accomplished.
Yeah, I think obviously I wouldn't have been able to get back on my feet if I didn't have some kind of support system, some friends or family members or somebody, you know. And some people don't have that. Some people, everyone says no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or getting the tools. Like at the time that I was homeless, I actually had money saved to get a place, you know, but I got, you know, I lost the place that I had, and I needed, you know, I just needed time to find somewhere else to live. And that was my in-between. But what if I didn't have any money at that time? Would even anybody have said yes? Because then they're like looking at, well, how long is this person going to be here?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it's the way our society, this is Western culture, you know. I don't think you have this in a lot of other cultures. You know, my departed husband, you know, who passed 2 years ago, me and him went to Mali, had a great trip in Mali, and we were in some of the villages that actually don't even exist anymore. But we had a chance to visit some of the villages, and they don't have homeless people in their village.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And when they build a house, the whole community builds a house. Like when someone gets married, the whole community stops everything they're doing and they build a house in like a day.
Yeah.
And then they have a house.
Yeah.
And it's not like, no, you need, you know, $500,000 and you got to say, you know, no,
And
it's
a
like,
down
we're going to
payment
build a
and,
house.
yeah.
And actually those houses are very comfortable. You know, it's not like this hut idea that people,
No.
you know, this
yeah.
thing people talk about. It's not like that. It's definitely like a lot of ignorance around what that way of life is and what it really feels like, you know. But this whole idea of everything being attached to money, and money is like the uli, like in Octavia Butler's book, like the thing in between relationships is this thing. It's the screens, but before that, it was the money. You know, money has to be part of the energy that's moving between people in order for anybody to do anything. And I'm not saying that, like, let's get rid of money, but I'm saying, like, everything is about, you got to have your own TV, you got to have your, and I talk about this in the book, you got to have your own refrigerator, you got to have your own stove, you got to have your own, like everything, everybody has to rebuild everything on their own and spend all these thousands of dollars to do that. And it's like, could share some of those things, you know what I mean? Maybe not all of them, but obviously you want your own bed,
Right,
you know?
right.
And it's nice to have a room with a door that closes.
Right.
I went through that for 2 years of not having even though like being a homeowner, like having a room where I didn't have a door, like people are walking through my room while I'm in the bed, like,
Oh my God.
you know, because I had my daughter and her family live with me for a few years while they were struggling, and it's like, you know, some things you want to have,
For
you
sure,
know, some
yeah.
things you want to have, but other things we could share more and make things a little easier. Sharing a bicycle, sharing a car, you know, there's things we can share that we don't and we don't like to, because everything's based on what I have, and you know, it's just the culture.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder for everybody. But what really makes it harder is how much money things cost. I mean,
Yeah.
for housing to cost what it costs, and for there not to be enough housing that's affordable, that's a serious purposeful issue. I think it's done with purpose. And in this state, in California, you know, it's like, I think I mean, definitely this is the most populated state in the country. And they would like to see people leave. They would like to see more people leave. So having high prices pushes people out. The hope is that they'll go somewhere else, but a lot of them end up on the street.
Yeah.
You know,
because they have nowhere to go.
and I think that's basically what that's about, you know. But when I look at the ecosystem, I see that California used to have bison. California used to have orange groves. I mean, Southern California used to have things that it doesn't have anymore. And now, when you look at California being like one of the biggest food industries in the country, but how is the food being grown in the desert and then you're piping the Colorado River to water it? Like, is that sustainable?
And we have children going to bed hungry every night in the same place that's like a breadbasket of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't even know how to answer any of that. Like, but just to say that I've had an experience that opens me to empathy for it, but the answers we need to come up with collectively. And a lot of times there's also a situation with people who need support, like in terms of mental illness.
Yeah.
And a lot of them end up on the street because they don't have the proper support, you know, and if you gave them a house, they'd still end up on the street. So how do you give them the support too, you know? So it's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that the idea of trying to push people out is like why there's so many people because the prices are too high. They're not realistic. And when you have jobs and people are getting paid $10 an hour, and then how are they supposed to live anywhere?
Yeah.
For $10 an hour.
Let alone in a
Obviously,
place like this.
and you can't even rent a room in somebody's place for that money. I mean, I know there's people spending $1,000 to rent a room.
More, yeah.
And more to rent a room, like not even an apartment.
And you're sharing a bathroom,
a room,
and you're,
like a dorm
yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
You know, and land is not an issue. There's plenty of space to have housing, you know, but why? I mean, I don't know. We can get into a lot of conversations about why that is.
No, but I appreciate
and
you.
I'm definitely not a politician. I don't have like all the best answers for all of that, but yeah.
No, but even without getting too technical, I mean, I think it's important just to, you know, these things stay stigmatized if we like refuse to talk about them.
Oh yeah, I'm not,
you know?
yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not super, it's not my expertise.
Right.
Area is what I'm trying to say. Like, I can have my opinion, but that's all I really have.
For sure.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I appreciate that. I want to ask you too, because you mentioned your late husband.
Yeah.
And you also lost your mother when you were quite young.
Yeah.
How do you deal with loss, and also sort of like, what are your strategies for keeping people in your life who maybe aren't physically here anymore?
Well, I'm actually doing a concert for my mother here in California in October at the Angel City Jazz Fest at Red Cat in October, called Images Beyond. She was a self-taught painter and fiction writer, poet, and I took some of her writings and created this piece for a one-woman show that'll be featuring actress and mentor of mine and multi-dimensional artist. She's like a choreographer, musician, Maya. She'll be the focal point for this piece, in an ensemble I'm bringing together with musicians here in California to do a tribute to her. It'll be the 40th anniversary of her death. Wow. Today is the day that my husband departed 2 years ago. Wow. Today, on July 30th. And I'm always bringing him into conversations when I feel, sometimes out of fun, but sometimes because he's needed. Like, I was in a meeting and like everyone was arguing and they all knew him, and I was like, I'm bringing Calvin into the conversation. He would tell you to slow down. Slow down.
That's so powerful, though.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and I did that earlier today. I brought him in the conversation. I can't remember what I said he would say at that moment. But, like, there's just little things that he would say that actually change the energy in the space, you know? So, like, I think his wisdom, like, I still bring with me, you know, at certain moments. And I had an album of his words, like, that I put out. I might try to redevise the music for that and just keep working with it, because he has a lot of recorded blogs that he did, so I can I could still continue to make music that energizes his voice, which he has a great voice, and the things he has to say are great, you know.
Yeah.
He's a interfaith minister, and yeah, just really powerful spirit, big spirit.
Yeah, no, I've actually, I listened to that album in preparing for this interview, and it really, the like, I guess you could say the scale of his personality really comes through, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's beautiful. I also want to ask you about farming.
Oh yeah, and that's connected with him too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we bought some land in 2018, and it's really funny because all my friends were like, why North Carolina? There's not even a what? Why don't you go to, if you want to go south, why don't you go to New Orleans? There's great music there. Like, why are you, what are you doing? Then COVID happened and they're like, oh. And now, of course, we couldn't have even afforded what we did now because the prices went like this.
Yeah.
Because now everyone values that, but they didn't value it. We barely just got in right before the huge change happened.
Wow.
You know, but yeah, we have some, well, I should say I now. It's like on me now. But we bought the land together with this vision of creating a space, kind of a shared vision for him, like the organic farming, and having a space where you could educate young people about growing food and bring in people from the city to have an experience on the land, and from my side to have a artist retreat where artists could come in and like have a transformational experience and create work while they're there, and eventually have maybe a jazz festival or something on the land like once a year. And like put little like sheds in different places on the land where people can stay. And you know, so I'm trying to combine all that now to manifest it. You know, it's a process, you know, but that's the vision. It's called Heartland Oasis Farms. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I want to ask you about some people that you've played with and musicians who have influenced you. I'll just throw some names at you, and you can say whatever comes to mind. You don't have to give their whole biography or something, but just, I guess, the associations that you have with them. First of all, I want to ask about Tomeka Reid, because you guys do so much amazing work together.
She's been a really close friend, and she's an inspiration. We've been playing together since I think either 99 or 2000. Wow. She started playing in Black Earth back then, in Black Earth Strings, you know, and then she was expanding out, doing a lot of things like with Mike Reed and Dee Alexander, and over the years, like, you know, we've just done a lot of work together. We were both on the executive team together when I was president, like on the AACM. Wow. She was a treasurer. And yeah, it's just been amazing to see her do all the things that she's doing. She's like super brilliant, beautiful person, really hard worker. And yeah, I love playing music with her. You know, we've played in so many different situations. I can't even list all of them. You know what I mean? She's definitely one of my longest time collaborators.
Amazing, amazing. You mentioned somebody earlier who I was meaning to ask you about, who I think has been a mentor of yours, at least in the past, James Newton. Oh yeah, James Newton was like one of my teachers, mentors. You know, he was the one that kind of blew my head off. Like when I first heard him play the flute, I was like, oh my God. I was a student at UC San Diego, and Jimmy Cheatham brought him in to play for the class, for the improv class, and I was like, what? Yeah, he really, really changed what flute can mean to me, you know, when I heard him play the flute and how he used the instrument. And then for years we've been connected, and like, you know, I've definitely like studied with him. It was funny, like I was living in California and I wasn't in school at the time, and I was like playing on the street to make money. And like I would go to lessons. He was teaching at Cal Arts at the time, and I would go up to Cal Arts. I wasn't a student at Cal Arts, but I would go up there to take lessons with him. And I remember it was like $30 for the lesson, and I would pay him. I would have this big bag of quarters, nickels, and dimes to pay him the $30, and he never said anything. He just took the money. And like, but years later, like we kind of got separated because I left and went to another school, and then I moved to Chicago. And then I think he was coming to Chicago to do something, a master class. And I was like, do you remember me? I'm the girl that was paying you with quarters, nickels, and dimes.
It's like, how could I forget? He's like, I wasn't going to say anything because I know people have financial challenges, and I just accepted the payment. I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh man. I want to ask you about Geri Allen.
Yeah.
Any impressions you have or any stories
She
to
was
share?
always like a super huge inspiration to me. I listened to her music so much, and I think I saw her when I was in Chicago when I was in my early 20s, and like she was just amazing to me. I remember there was an album, I can't remember the title of the album, but like every song, I had been reading Carlos Castaneda, one of his books, and it was like she was citing the book in the album.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, like she's read this book, and she like made this music. And yeah, I never knew that I would end up following in her footsteps to become the head of the jazz program at Pitt.
Right.
But she had started connecting with me before that. She invited me to help teach at her jazz girls camp in New Jersey.
Wow.
And then invited me to play. I played at the Stone with her, John Zorn's Stone.
Yeah.
And while I was at UC Irvine, she did this big telematic project. She had George Lewis at Pittsburgh, and she wanted to collaborate with a telematic concert because I was doing telematics with Michael Desson and Mark Dresser when I was at UCI.
Right.
And she wanted to do a telematic project, and I'm really glad we got to do it. Because that was like the last time I played with her.
That was shortly
even though it was
before
over
she
the
passed
internet.
away, right?
Yeah. And it meant a whole lot to me to take on the position at Pittsburgh because of all the work that she did. I didn't end up, it's kind of deep that I didn't end up staying there any longer than she did, because she was there for 3 years, and then I was there for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm at University of Virginia. I'm a
Yeah.
professor there. And it definitely, I was meant to be there, but I was also meant to leave,
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I tried to do a lot. We'll see like what some of the work that I did, if it happens or not. One of the things is I helped to build, to have literally a physical construct of like a jazz and poetry venue.
Wow.
At Pittsburgh off campus as a community engagement center, where it was like for seating 50 people, so that, the purpose for me was that local musicians in Pittsburgh would have a space where they could develop new work and bring innovation to their way of being, not just tradition, but to have a space where they could create new music and have a listening room, kind of like the Stone, because most of the places for listening to jazz are like restaurants and like bars, and like people have expectation of playing standards, and they're talking and it's a social environment, but to have a space where people actually come just to listen, but a smaller venue. And me and Don Lundy Martin, who was the head of Center for African American Poetry and Poetics, worked on that. We collaborated on that. She was doing the poetry side, I was doing the jazz side. I don't know if they're going to go through with it, because obviously I'm not there anymore.
Right.
And now they have a new dean, but that was some of the effort that I was making to hopefully transform the scene in Pittsburgh, and I hope it happens. But it was definitely an honor to like touch that legacy and be a part of it, to sit in her chair, like at her desk, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And be there and try to continue the work that she was forwarding from Nathan Davis at Pittsburgh. And also that relationship expanded into like, connecting more with Terri Lynn Carrington, and she's just doing so much amazing work, and I'm always like so happy to like support or collaborate on anything that she wants to do, because it's always super amazing. Like she just did an exhibit, Jazz Without Patriarchy, at the Emerson Emerson College Gallery, Media Gallery, I think. and she created this fictional conversation between Mary Lou Williams and Geri Allen.
Wow.
So cool.
Oh, wow.
And I think she's developing it into a film.
Oh, I'll
But
have to
Terri
check
Lynn
that out.
also like kind of brought me into this work she is doing called Visualizing Abolition, and looking at basically looking at the prison system.
Wow.
And that became really personal work for me, you know, in terms of like something that's very important that I've been continuing to do. And so like participating in that with her has been really great too, you know, so yeah.
And I was actually going to ask you about her because I know you've done a lot together. Have you played together, or are all
No,
of you?
yeah, I've played in her some of her ensembles. Like we just did a concert at UC Santa Cruz for the Visualizing Abolition Project.
Oh, wow.
She does a lot of stuff with a lot of people. But I did invite her to play with me last year when I did that Vision Festival concert
Oh,
with
cool.
Joshua.
Yeah.
And I had Terri Lynn also on that
Wow.
project, which
Joshua White.
was awesome.
Mm,
Yeah.
amazing. I think that I saw a video of you playing with Henry Grimes. Was that a one-off, or did you do more stuff with him?
I did a few things. Me and Tomeka
Right.
played with Henry Grimes for Knoxville
Mm.
for Big Ears some years ago.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then we'd done some stuff in New York a few times. But yeah, he was really great. I
Yeah.
loved his poetry.
Oh, wow.
People take that for granted.
I didn't even know he wrote
Oh,
poetry.
yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, he's a great
Oh, wow.
great writer and bassist.
Mm.
Yeah, a loss for us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. You mentioned George Lewis a couple minutes ago. I wonder if you
Yeah,
can...
George Lewis has been an incredible inspiration. He's obviously a very important member of the AACM, and he's created a lot of amazing experiences for people in the AACM. For example, there was a year that I think he was invited to do some work at Umbria festival in Italy, and instead of just doing it for his own purposes, he made it into a big AACM event, and we did like, I don't know, several nights of concerts with the Great Black Music Ensemble. This is some years ago, but there's a recording that was put out in Italy of some of those concerts. And he's just a very visionary person, and he's been a mentor to me. And he, you know, it's like whenever you talk to George, he's always going to bring a fresh perspective that you couldn't imagine, like, beforehand. Like, oh, like, he just creates aha moments, like, every other second. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it seems like his work is just so varied, but in the best possible way.
Yeah. I think I had one of the funnest moments recently was last year playing on his work for Voyager. Like I was improvising with Voyager.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember the name of the festival, but it was in New York last summer. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Voyager is the software he made, like that improvises.
Yeah.
Like he connects it to a piano, and it's like it has its own ideas of how to improvise.
Yeah.
So I was improvising with Voyager.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's...
And with a whole big ensemble that had composed music, and then there were spaces for us to improvise. So my tag team person, or my improvising collaborator was computer.
That's amazing. That's super cool. Wow. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can find a recording.
I think
of
it's
that.
online.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. You mentioned
Time Spans is the name of the festival.
Time Spans. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out for sure. You talked about Hamid Drake much earlier in the interview.
So me and Hamid and Harrison Bankhead, who just recently departed.
Oh, wow.
Harrison was a great bassist from Chicago, amazing sound and brilliant and funny, you know, but the three of us had a trio called Indigo Trio, and that was the first group that I toured with in Europe. Like we played all over Europe for several years, but Hamid's always been like big brother to me, you know. And I think that he opened a lot of doors for me. Like he didn't make it known or anything, but I think that like you know, when I first started performing and getting work, I think it was because he was talking about me.
Okay.
You know, I think he really like opened doors for me, but he just was like always just a great like big brother, like always there. He's like the godfather of my daughter, and like
Wow.
you know, just yeah, just an amazing musician.
Yeah.
And also very like great person to be interviewed.
Yeah. Oh, I would
Because
love
he's
to.
very like has a lot of studying that he's done on spiritual practices, and like you know, he's got great philosophical ideas, and how he connects that with his musical path is really unique.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
He definitely should be talked about more, interviewed
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
It's funny because to me, I see him as this like, you know, huge person who's on all these recordings that I listen to
Yeah.
and stuff. But I mean, that's just in my little world. You
but
know.
how many people actually interview him or
Right.
or like write about him, or you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
he definitely needs more acknowledgement. But
Yeah.
he doesn't need it, but he
we need
deserves it.
and
He
we
deserves it.
need to hear what
And
he
we
has
can
to
benefit
say.
from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Wow. Wow. You talked about Roscoe Mitchell earlier too, I think.
Yeah. Roscoe Mitchell, he is like one of those musicians that I always was dying to play with, and then I actually got to play with. You know, so he's super brilliant, but he's also really funny. Like if I ever call him, he is so excited about everything. Like he's always doing a lot of really amazing creative things, and never ever like he's never in the slumps. Like he's always just like, wow, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and what about this, you know? And he just never stops. Like he's like he's unstoppable. And like for example, he did an exhibit of visual art in Chicago in March, I think is when it ended.
Of 2023.
And it was like Corbett versus Dempsey Gallery. And I think they were like, yeah, we'd like to do an exhibit, because he had done a few pieces. And he was like, okay, well, how many pieces do you need? Oh, you know, I don't know what they said, but he generated probably 100 paintings within a really short period. And they're all super amazing. Like, amazing. And, you know, yeah, like that's Roscoe Mitchell. Whatever he puts his mind to, he's going to do something that's never been done in that way before. Like he has this percussion setup that he'll tour with some of it, but he has these extravagant ones at home that he brought one to the gallery. And it's like he'll put them together, like he designs them, and it's like so many different sounds. Like a percussionist hasn't come up with anything like that before. You know what I mean? With all the different colors and sounds and different things that it can do. Like, yeah, it's a new invention.
He's such a force of nature.
Yeah, he definitely is an incredible innovator, you know, and you can't stop him.
Yeah.
And nobody should want to.
No, I mean, the few times I've been fortunate enough to see him play live, it's just like...
And his music is really fun to play because it will challenge all parts of who you are. Like, you know, I have my classical background, you know, I have my jazz background, I have my free improv background or whatever, and I got to use all of it to play his music, you know? And so it's really fun, challenging. Yeah.
Amazing. Just before we started rolling the cameras and the mics, we were talking about Joshua White.
Oh, yeah. Joshua is super brilliant. I love that he reads so much, and I can't wait to see. I know one day he's going to write a book. I don't know what it's going to be about, but I I am putting it out there that he's going to write a book, and I can't wait to read whatever it's going to be, because he's an avid reader.
We actually, when I interviewed him, I asked him about what he was reading
At the time. Yeah.
'cause
He's definitely a bright mind, you know, like a brilliant mind. And then his playing, you know, he's got like this deep gospel foundation, but then he also has the classical, and then he also has like, you know, the jazz, and then he also has the experimental, and it's like, you know, he can go in any direction at any time, and he's free, you know what I mean? Like he just like has incredible, first of all, his hands, like he can do anything pretty much.
he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he's really unbelievable, and I love playing with him. Yeah.
Well, I want to close by asking you about someone who I'm not sure if you ever played with him, but I know that because you talk about him in your book, I know his music made an impact on you. Ras G.
Oh my God, thank you for bringing up Ras G. You know, Ras G I consider one of my mentors.
Wow.
Because he really encouraged me to do electronics. He was the one that had me get a 404.
No way. Oh,
And he was
wow.
supposed to give me a lesson, and we never got to that point. But he did. He encouraged me to get a 404, and he would say like, yeah, I've been listening. He knew about my music before I met him and stuff.
Wow.
And then I got the opportunity to play with him several times. Like we did Xenogenesis at the Huntington.
Wow.
And he played with Black Earth Ensemble at the Huntington, but they didn't record it. They were supposed to record it, and they didn't record it. And then I did a big concert at the Irvine Barclay. It was a piece I had called When Life's Door Opens, and he played on that. And I brought him to UC Irvine, I don't know, 4 or 5 times to do solo performances, because it was just so amazing. And sometimes I think he brought his group once, but I had this festival that I used to do called the UCI Contemporary Black Music Festival, or Black Urban Music Festival, I think I called it. And so every year I was bringing different artists, but I would bring him every time.
Wow.
Yeah. And the last time we saw each other, it was like I was getting ready to leave Irvine, and I did kind of a party, a goodbye party, and I asked him to play. So I had him, I had Zachariah on trombone, Chris Williams, trumpet, and I might have had some students from UCI. And it was funny. Oh, I had Radius, Ramon.
I've met him.
Radius, yeah, he was playing also, and he also does beats and stuff. So Radius was there. Rashi was like late. So Radius was playing, and then Ras G came up. Like, he just showed up out of nowhere, like, because he came after it started. And he just kind of like he just gestured to Radius, get off the stage, I'm taking over now. Like, no. Because Radius like, well, can I play? You know, he was trying to like play with him. And he was like, no, get off the stage. And so like Rashi is playing. And then I had my 404 up there too, I think. So it was like 3 404s up there or something. And mine, I didn't realize was still on. And it like, I don't know. And he was like, and then he like did something to mine. And then he like just totally just kicked ass.
Man.
Just totally kicked ass. And then when it was over, he seemed like really serious. And I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, I need a ride home. And, you know, got him a ride home. And I was like, are you all right? And he was like, no, I'm not. Like, and he, you know, said something about he had some health issues going on, but I didn't know that it was that serious, you know, but he definitely was different. You know, his energy was different. And then literally not long after that, it was like he died.
Yeah.
And it was like, what? Like, we were supposed to go to Ethiopia and we never went to the restaurant. We were supposed to do a few things,
Yeah.
you know, and he loved my husband, that, you know, my husband that passed, like, you call him Cool Cal, you know, and just, you know, and he was just such a great soul. And what I really wanted to do was to do a duet with him.
Wow.
And I had been talking with Clock Shop about doing a duet on their space, but it just didn't get to happen. And like now he's gone. It was just like, I'm really grateful. First of all, shout out to Jason McDaniel for telling me about Ras G. And that I felt that I acted on it. You know, like I met this person and I tried to engage them as much as I could, and I'm really grateful that I did that, because now they're gone and they're so young. Like I didn't expect that to happen. You know what I mean? But he's definitely an inspiration. And even though he's like way younger than me, I consider him kind of a mentor. We ran into each other at the Leg Guess Who in the Netherlands festival.
Wow.
And I was like doing a solo flute, and it was my first solo flute and electronics concert. And it was like, see what you did? And he was like, what are you doing? You know, and it was funny, like, you know, yeah, but he was really great.
A beautiful artist.
Yeah. Another close collaborator that's like a huge inspiration to me is Renée Baker. She's a violinist, and when I met her, she was like the first chair violist for the Chicago Sinfonietta, and she hadn't really been improvising. Now she's like made, I don't even know how many albums, composed I don't know how many pieces, probably in hundreds or 1,000 or something compositions. She has her own orchestra called the Chicago Modern Orchestra Project. She's a member of the AACM, and she's also a visual artist and does like compositions with film, like does a lot of like sound compositions for film. And so it's like probably the most prolific artist that I've ever known in anything that she tries to do. You know what I'm saying? So, and an amazing person, and like Roscoe, totally totally unstoppable. And someone like Hamid that I feel that really, you know, should get more, you know, I guess just more acknowledgement for like her contribution to new music and all these other fields that she's working in. You know, so I wanted to just say her name too.
No, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think you wrote about her in the book a little bit too.
Because she's in Mandorla Awakening.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, Nicole Mitchell Gantt, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's really been beautiful.
Yeah.